Hello, Reddit. My name's Mark Reynolds. I'm 33, and until recently, I thought my biggest problem in life was that I worked too much. I have always been the dependable one in my family, the guy who shows up when something breaks, the one who drives people to appointments, the one who remembers birthdays and brings extra chairs to family gatherings because someone might need them. My parents always said, Mark's our rock. It used to make me proud, but lately it just feels like a label that gives everyone else permission to lean on me until I crack. My older sister Jessica is 36. She's the fun one, the life of the party, the single mom who posts motivational quotes about doing it all on her own. People love her energy. They call her strong, independent, resilient, all those words people use when they don't actually know what's going on behind closed doors. The truth is, Jessica has been chaos in human form since we were kids. Late to everything, always in some kind of drama, constantly needing help. From someone else, of course. She has two kids, Ethan, who's 8, and Lily, who's 5. Sweet kids, but they've learned from their mom how to turn guilt into currency. I work in IT, and after years of grinding through long hours, late night calls, and endless urgent issues, I finally decided to take my first real vacation in years. 2 weeks off. No work calls, no family favors, just peace. I rented a small cabin by a lake up north, surrounded by trees and silence. I stocked up on food, booked fishing lessons, even downloaded a few audiobooks I had been meaning to listen to. I was determined to spend 2 weeks doing absolutely nothing productive. The morning I was supposed to leave, I was half-packed and humming to myself when I heard pounding on my door. I opened it to find Jessica on my porch, hair wild, eyes frantic, and her kids standing beside her in pajamas holding stuffed animals. She had a suitcase and that look of barely contained desperation she gets when she's about to dump a problem in someone else's lap. She said, "Mark, please, I just need a couple of days. My sitter canceled and I can't miss work. I swear it's just for the weekend." Ethan was rubbing his eyes. Lily was holding a cereal bar, and I felt that familiar mix of irritation and pity. I should have said no, I really should have. But she looked so panicked that I said, "Fine, 2 days, but you pick them up Sunday morning." She hugged me and said, "You're the best. I owe you big time." 2 days turned into 4. By Monday morning, there was no sign of Jessica. Every time I called, she had an excuse. I picked up an extra shift. My car's acting up. I've got a migraine. Meanwhile, my quiet vacation had turned into a daycare center. Ethan accidentally broke my coffee maker while trying to make grown-up coffee. Lily spilled juice all over my couch and my grocery budget evaporated. I spent nearly $300 in extra food, gas for school drop-offs, and random kid things. By day 9, I was exhausted. I woke up to find both kids in my bed, cartoons blaring on my TV, and sticky handprints on the walls. I texted Jessica, "You need to pick up your kids today. I'm not your free nanny." She replied with a long message about how I never understood what being a single mom is like, and that family is supposed to help. I stared at the message for a long time, trying not to explode. I told her I had plans, that I had already lost my cabin deposit because of her. That's when she called me, voice full of venom, and said I was selfish and heartless. I hung up before I said something I'd regret. That evening, I was sitting in my kitchen trying to unwind when I saw her car pull up. She stormed out, slammed the door, and started yelling before she even reached my porch. She shouted, "You're selfish, Mark. We're family. It's your duty to help me when I need it." Her voice was so loud that my neighbor came out to see what was going on. My mom happened to be there too, because she'd dropped off homemade lasagna earlier. Mom told Jessica to calm down, but Jess turned on her and yelled, "Of course you're taking his side. You always loved him more." Then she stormed off, leaving her kids standing awkwardly in the living room, while Mom and I stood there in silence. Mom just sighed and said, "Don't worry, she'll cool off." But she didn't. Later that night, around 9, There was a knock at the door. I opened it to see two police officers standing there. My stomach dropped. One of them said, "Sir, we received a report of two unattended minors at this address." I felt my blood pressure spike. I explained everything. Oh, how my sister dropped them off, how she hadn't come back, how I had been taking care of them. The officers looked uncomfortable. One of them asked to see the kids, so I called them over. Ethan told them that Uncle Mark's funny but strict, and Lily said, "Mommy said we're staying here because she needs a break." The officers exchanged a look. One of them said, "Sir, everything seems fine, but we had to check." They apologized for the inconvenience and left. I just stood there, furious and humiliated, staring at my front door like it had personally betrayed me. I sat down on the couch, head in my hands, thinking about how far Jessica was willing to go just to make me look like the bad guy. The next morning, I called her. She didn't answer. I tried again. Nothing. Then, around noon, my phone buzzed with a message. It said, "Hope you enjoyed your visit from the cops. Maybe now you'll learn not to talk to me like that." I blocked her. A few days later, things had almost started to feel normal again. I was catching up on work emails, cooking for one again, and finally enjoying the quiet that had been stolen from me. But that calm lasted about 3 days before the next storm rolled in. My mom called me one afternoon, her voice tight and uneasy. She said Jessica told her that I kicked her kids out and that CPS was going to investigate me for neglect. My jaw actually dropped. It felt like my sister had turned from dramatic to downright malicious overnight. Mom sounded shaken, asking, "Mark, what's going on? Did something happen I don't know about?" I could hear the uncertainty in her tone, the part of her that still believed Jessica's stories. I invited her over and pulled out my phone. I showed her the text messages, the ones where Jessica admitted she needed a sitter, the ones where she blew up when I told her to pick up her kids, the one where she bragged about sending the cops. Then I showed Mom my grocery receipts and the screenshots of school pickup messages to prove I had been taking care of the kids the entire time. Mom sat there in silence, her face pale, flipping through the evidence like she was trying to piece together who her own daughter had become. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft. She said, "I didn't know it was this bad." But then, as always, she tried to patch it over. She said, "She's struggling, Mark. She's under a lot of pressure. You know how hard it is for her." I had heard that line 1,000 times. It was the family's default excuse for Jessica. She's just overwhelmed. She's just tired. She's just unlucky. But I'd reached my limit. I told Mom that I'd been covering for Jessica for years, quietly fixing her messes while she played the victim. Last winter, I paid her electric bill so her kids wouldn't freeze. The year before, I loaned her $500 for car repairs that turned out to be a spa weekend she posted pictures from online. I told Mom I was done being her safety net. I said I loved her and the kids, but I wasn't going to keep enabling her chaos while she dragged everyone down with her. Mom looked heartbroken. She said she understood, but she couldn't help worrying about Jessica and the kids. I told her she could worry all she wanted, but I was out. For once in my life, I wasn't going to be the family's fixer. Mom left quietly that evening, holding her purse like it was the only thing anchoring her. That night, Jessica posted a long, furious rant on Facebook. It was one of those melodramatic posts with no names, but everyone knew who it was about. It said something along the lines of, "Some people think money makes them better. They act like helping family is a burden when they've had everything handed to them." Toxic family members are the worst kind. The comments were full of her friends cheering her on, saying, "You're doing your best, girl, and you don't need negative energy in your life." I saw the post because a cousin screenshotted it and sent it to me with the caption, "Dude, is this about you?" I didn't respond. I just deleted the message and decided to stay out of it. 2 days later, I came home from work to see my sister's car parked in my driveway again. My stomach sank. I had that familiar mix of anger and exhaustion that only she could trigger. I almost didn't go to the door, but then I saw a second car behind hers. My mom's. That was the worst sign of all. I opened the door, and there they were. Jessica had that self-righteous look, the one she gets when she's already decided she's the victim. Mom looked like she'd been crying. Jessica started talking fast, saying she wanted to clear the air. Mom tried to take the lead, saying she just wanted to mediate. She said, "Mark, can't you just forgive her? She's going through a lot." Jessica crossed her arms and interrupted before Mom could finish, saying she didn't need forgiveness, she just wanted me to admit I was wrong. I asked her what exactly I was supposed to have done wrong. Was it feeding her kids, keeping them safe, or refusing to be her unpaid babysitter forever? Her face turned bright red, like she wasn't expecting me to stay calm. She started pacing, her voice rising, saying I had humiliated her by talking back, by making her look bad to Mom. Mom tried to diffuse the tension, telling both of us to lower our voices, but Jessica wasn't having it. She spun around, grabbed Ethan and Lily by their hands, and snapped, "Come on, we're leaving. Uncle Mark doesn't love you anymore." The kids looked confused at first, then their eyes filled with tears. Ethan asked if he did something wrong, and Lily clung to her mother's arm, sobbing. I stood there frozen, angry but also sick to my stomach. Mom looked completely torn, standing between us like she didn't know which one of her children she was supposed to protect. I could see it on her face. The guilt, the disbelief, the exhaustion of years spent trying to keep peace in a family that didn't want peace. She opened her mouth like she was about to say something, but Jessica yanked the kids toward the door before she could. I didn't move. I didn't argue. I didn't try to stop them. I just watched them leave, feeling a weight lift and another one settle in its place. Mom stood there for a few seconds longer, her eyes full of sadness and confusion. I could tell she wanted me to call Jessica back, to apologize, to be the bigger person again. But I was done being the one who fixed everything. I closed the door and didn't look back. A week later, I thought things were finally settling down. I hadn't heard from Jessica, and Mom was keeping her distance, too. I was starting to get back into my normal rhythm. Work, gym, quiet dinners alone. For the first time in weeks, I felt like my life was my own again. But that illusion shattered one Tuesday morning when my phone rang from an unknown number. I answered, thinking it might be a client or delivery service, but instead I heard a calm, professional voice introducing herself as a representative from Child Protective Services. She said they wanted to follow up on a report. My stomach dropped. I sat down slowly, gripping the edge of my desk. She explained that there had been an allegation claiming I had left 2 children unsupervised, that they were found hungry and neglected. I didn't even have to ask who had made the report. There was only one person who would go that far. For a moment, I couldn't speak. I felt a cold, heavy mix of anger and disbelief spreading through me. My own sister had actually called CPS on me, after everything I had done, after feeding her kids, missing my vacation, losing money, and getting humiliated in front of neighbors and the police. She still found a way to twist the knife deeper. The CPS agent asked if we could schedule a time to talk and verify the situation. I said yes and offered to come to their office that afternoon. I wasn't about to let this linger. When I arrived, she was polite but cautious, her tone measured like she was used to walking into messy family feuds. She asked questions. When the kids had been in my care, why, for how long, and what my relationship with Jessica was like. I laid it all out. I explained that Jessica had shown up unannounced, left her children for over a week, and that I had fed them, driven them to school, and even entertained police officers when she tried to claim I'd abandoned them. I handed over copies of everything I had, text messages showing her begging me to watch the kids, screenshots of her excuses, grocery receipts for meals I'd bought, and, most importantly, the officer's report from their welfare check confirming the children were fine and well cared for. The agent read through everything carefully, her expression shifting from suspicion to tired recognition. It was clear this wasn't the first time she'd seen someone try to weaponize the system out of spite. She sighed and said they would close the case, that there was no evidence of neglect, and that the only thing concerning was Jessica's pattern of erratic behavior. She even mentioned that the department might advise her about wasting agency time. Even though I knew I was in the clear, the whole ordeal shook me. I had never been in trouble with any kind of authority in my life. The idea that my name was now in some CPS file even briefly made me furious. It wasn't just the false accusation. It was the realization that Jessica didn't see me as her brother anymore. I was just another problem she could manipulate, another obstacle to punish for not giving her what she wanted. I left the office that day feeling like something inside me had finally broken. I wasn't angry in the way I used to be. It was a deeper kind of exhaustion, the kind that comes from finally understanding that someone you love isn't going to change. A few days later, Mom called me. Her voice sounded smaller than usual, almost fragile. She said she had talked to Jessica and had finally realized something wasn't right. Apparently, Jessica had been telling everyone in the family that I was under investigation for child neglect. She spun it like she was protecting her kids from me, painting herself as some kind of martyr. But when Mom pressed her for details, Jessica got defensive, stumbled over her words, and finally admitted she had made the report herself. That was the moment, Mom said, when it all clicked for her. She came over the next day carrying a plate of cookies like she used to when she wanted to smooth things over. But this time, she didn't defend Jessica. She sat at my kitchen table and apologized, truly apologized, for doubting me. She said she couldn't believe Jessica had gone that far and that she now saw how long this pattern had been going on. She told me that even as kids, Jessica had always been jealous of me. When we were little, if I got praise for good grades, she would fake being sick to get attention. When I got my first job, she accused our parents of favoring me because I never had to struggle. Then Mom brought up something that hit me hard. She reminded me of the year Dad got sick. I had been 25, just starting my career, and when the medical bills started piling up, I took over. I paid them quietly, never complained, just handled it because someone had to. Jessica had disappeared for weeks during that time, telling everyone she was too stressed to deal with hospitals. When she finally came around, it wasn't to help. It was to ask for gas money. I remember Dad lying in his hospital bed, smiling weakly, thanking me for keeping things together while Jessica sat on her phone in the corner, acting like she was the one who'd been burdened. Mom said she hadn't seen it clearly back then. She thought Jessica was just sensitive, just going through her own struggles. But now, after everything that happened, the false police report, the CPS call, the lies, she said she realized the truth. Jessica wasn't struggling. She was manipulating. She thrived on chaos, used guilt like currency, and turned every act of kindness into a weapon the moment she didn't get her way. Mom looked at me with tears in her eyes and said she realized too late that I'd been carrying the family while Jessica played the victim. It had been 2 months since everything went down. The police showing up at my door, the CPS call, the Facebook rants, the shouting matches, all of it. For the first few weeks, I avoided any family contact that involved Jessica. I needed distance, real distance. I poured myself into work, went to the gym, and started doing something I hadn't done in years, sleeping without waking up in the middle of the night to answer someone else's problem. I didn't realize how much mental space she had taken up until it was gone. My phone was quiet, my house stayed clean, and the silence felt like luxury. Eventually, I decided to do something for myself. I rebooked my vacation, not to the same lake cabin I'd lost before. I wanted somewhere new, somewhere untouched by the chaos that had ruined the first one. I picked a quiet coastal town a few hours away, rented a small cottage overlooking the water, and told no one except my boss. No family, no texts, no updates. Just me, the ocean, and the sound of gulls instead of arguments. That trip was the reset I didn't know I needed. I spent the mornings walking along the shoreline, the afternoons reading on the porch, and the evenings grilling dinner with a cold beer in hand. I didn't check social media. I didn't think about Jessica or Mom or anyone else. For the first time in a long while, I remembered what peace felt like. When I drove back home 2 weeks later, I felt lighter, calmer, more centered. I thought the universe was finally giving me a break. But when I got home, there was something waiting for me in my mailbox. A handwritten envelope, my name on it in familiar handwriting. My heart sank when I realized who it was from. I stood in my driveway for a good minute, debating whether to open it. Eventually, I did. It was from Jessica. The note was short but shaky, like it had been rewritten more than once. She said she went too far, that she felt like everyone had been choosing me over her again, that she was sorry for calling CPS. She ended the note by saying the kids missed me. I didn't know how to feel. My first instinct was anger, the kind that burns slow, the kind that doesn't fade even when you think you've moved on. But under that anger was something else, a strange sadness. For all the awful things she had done, she was still my sister. The same person I used to build pillow forts with. The same one who once cried when our dad got sick. I could see the desperation between the lines of her note. It wasn't just guilt, it was fear. Fear of being left behind by the only people who still put up with her. I left the letter on my kitchen counter and went about my day, trying not to dwell on it. The next morning, I woke up to my phone buzzing. It wasn't a call. It was a message. A photo. Jessica had sent a picture of Ethan holding up a drawing. In big, uneven letters, it said, "Uncle Mark is my hero." He was grinning from ear to ear, missing one front tooth, with Lily standing next to him holding a slice of toast like it was a trophy. The image hit me harder than I expected. For all of Jessica's drama, her kids were innocent. They didn't deserve to be caught in the middle of adult resentment. I didn't reply right away. I sat with it for most of the day, staring at the photo every time I picked up my phone. By evening, I realized I didn't want to punish the kids for their mother's mistakes. I wasn't ready to forgive Jessica, but I could still be there for Ethan and Lily. So I did something simple. I ordered 2 pizzas, drove over to Jessica's house, and told myself this wasn't about fixing her life or sweeping everything under the rug. It was about showing the kids that I still cared, that I hadn't disappeared. When she opened the door, I barely recognized her. She looked exhausted, and dark circles under her eyes, hair pulled back messily. But there was something different. Her usual defensiveness, the sharp edge she carried like armor, wasn't there. She just looked tired and small, like someone who had finally realized they'd run out of people to blame. She didn't make excuses, didn't start another argument. She just looked at the pizzas in my hands and said, "Thank you." And for the first time in a very long time, it didn't sound rehearsed. It sounded real. Ethan and Lily ran to hug me, shouting about school and drawings and how they missed my famous grilled cheese sandwiches. I stayed for an hour helping them with their food, listening to their stories, watching as Jessica quietly cleaned up the table. It wasn't some big emotional breakthrough, no hugs or apologies beyond that one note. But something about the silence between us felt different this time. It wasn't heavy or hostile. It was cautious, like 2 people trying to rebuild trust one small act at a time. When I left, Jessica stood in the doorway, watching the kids wave. She didn't say anything else, and I didn't either. On the drive home, I felt strangely at peace. I didn't forgive her completely. I wasn't sure I ever would. But I realized forgiveness didn't have to mean forgetting. It could just mean letting go of the weight she'd put on me. I've learned something through all of this. Family isn't about fixing every mistake or setting yourself on fire to keep someone else warm. It's about caring with boundaries, loving people without losing yourself in their chaos. For the first time, I think Jessica might finally understand that too. And maybe, just maybe, she's starting to learn that too.